we would like huff and puff and arrive and be like, oh my God, we like barely made it here. So like our job as parents may be complete because we got them there and we're like, phew, job done. But theirs just has begun. So I started to kind of see that like the way that they're starting to develop a relationship mentally and emotionally, perhaps with their sports, started to become, I don't know, muddled with like a little bit of negativity and anxiety.
Welcome back to a special episode of On the Fly. In today's casual conversation, we're very lucky to have to be joined by an extremely insightful and compelling sports parent turned tech CEO, founder of Orgo, which stands for Organization on the Go. We welcome Zoya Lehrer as a panelist as we discuss the concept of time literacy, the coach-parent partnership, and other lessons learned from schlepping kids from one field to the next. So Zoya, welcome. We're going to give you an opportunity to tell us about yourself. Tell us how you went from the whole story, from Ukraine to Brooklyn, from Rutgers to Wall Street, and then now you're Mom Inc., right? Super mom, team parent extraordinaire, and how Orgo came about. So please tell us everything.
Thank you both, and thank you for having me. I'd love to. So, firstly, I will say I'm a parent of three athletes. Their ages are 14, 10, and 7. We swim year round competitively. We do club soccer, club lacrosse. We came up through rec, travel, and now, kind of progressing into a little bit of the club circuit as well. We've done track, dance, you name it, short of softball and basketball. I feel like we've done it. So, definitely speaking from first person narration, but from a professional perspective that kind of has led us here today. I spent 20 years in financial services and banking, so not at all related, but always in a tech capacity. So you went ahead and you mentioned Rutgers. So shout out to Rutgers, graduated with a computer science and information technology degree, put that to work all of the while in financial services. So I would oversee large enterprise tech stacks. I would merge banks, take care of technology, kind of stacks and things. And so all of that was great. And about 2 years ago, I decided to vote myself off the island and pursue something else. So I took that skill set and pointed it at a problem that started to arise literally daily and then pretty much hourly within my own household. And that was managing logistics of youth sports, specifically for the three wonderful girls I mentioned, had become just pretty much like all too much. Anybody who's got a family and three kids specifically seems to be like the magic number where, we just kind of get broken. We're outnumbered and we say yes to a lot of things. And then all of a sudden we started to kind of look around and be like, this is insane. Like I've 15 more years that I'm on this journey and I couldn't fathom, doing all of it's not even the runaround that I minded. It's just like this chaos of figuring out what time do we leave? Who do we bring? Where's the carpool? When do we start preparing? Where are the conflicts? Trying to, confirm attendance in TeamSnap, but we're trying to figure out where the other three kids are. So all of that daily kind of parent math, which I think many of us can relate to, is what enraged me as a technologist. Like the technology has to help. Like this is a point where we've got AI and all these wonderful, progressions, and I just want that to apply to me in the home. And so the vision for Orgo, as you mentioned, Organization on the Go is what it stands for, is really in the spirit of the word logistics. The aha moment came where it was like, hold on. Why do we use that word? It's appropriate. Well, it's because we get the right people to the right places on time, which is exactly what we're in the business of doing here every single day, hour in, hour out. So I was like, okay, well, who does logistics well? Supply chain management does that well. UPS does that well. Amazon doesn't skip a beat when they're dropping packages off at my house. So how are we any different with timely arrivals and taking off and handing off and all these different time-based kind of commitments that we've signed up for? So that was the inspiration, I would say. And so ultimately bootstrapped, assembled a small team of doers, as I like to say, and this is about 2 years ago. We got to building and designing and literally pen to paper, just kind of mapped out what would be an ideal tool that I would have in front of me that would inform me better, that would change, manage change better, that would give me all the details that are otherwise missing to have at my fingertips so I can ultimately execute with precision. Anyway, Orgo was born, and so it does three very specific things, and I'll pause there. We'll kind of jump back and forth, I'm sure, but it does three main things. Firstly, we recognize, especially as the sports parents and volunteer coaches, that we are using a whole suite of tools. We've got TeamSnap and League apps and WhatsApp groups and game changers. I mean, you name it, we have it. And what's worse is that we as parents don't have to be in control of what those tools are. In other words, they're chosen for us. And then we're kind of on the receiving end of being like, oh, cool, new team, new season, new tool, thanks. Right. So now schedules are everywhere. We've got work calendars, we've got personal calendars, and these team management apps. And so that was job number one: centralize the schedules in one place, aggregate the data, give me a single source of truth from which I can then make further decisions and at least have a bearing for like what's what and who's where. So that's what we do. We bring all the team management schedules into Orgo, as well as your Apple, your Google, and soon to be Outlook calendars as well. And we then kind of position ourselves to be the single source of truth. But why we really want to do that is because we uniquely then take in those events and we level them up to true logistics. We will take a game from 3 to 4 p.m. and we will represent time as you actually are about to spend it. With that hour early arrival, which coach wants you to get there for warm-ups or 45 minutes or whatever it is, with the travel time, sometimes our games are 2.5 hours away. We're at two different states, right? Like that, there's a significant chunk of time that's taken into effect as part of the journey itself. And the preparation time, like I need 15 minutes to get stuff together. We're packing our bags, we're gathering up the cleats. All of that T minus is what we do within the tool. And on the way back, so then there's more traffic being built up and there's a longer journey perhaps on the return trip. And then lastly, we overlay carpool drivers. So who's driving to, who's staying at, and who's driving back from, because God knows without all of the carpools, we never would be able to do all the things that we typically do. And so we've recognized the driver as kind of an important component of that event. And then we have multi-stop events. You can have errands in there that's programmed in. You can have multiple routes that we optimize. Like you want to go to like Starbucks and then pick up your dry cleaning and then get to practice. We'll optimize that route for you. And then we surface it out to what we call the whole crew. So you're going to bring your parent, your partner, your wife, your husband, your kids in there, your caregiver, whether it's like your mom who's in there, maybe a babysitter wants to see all of that information and be on the same page. Then everybody's operating off of the same blueprint. And then lastly, we send notifications that guide. It's time to start preparing. It's time to start driving. You kind of are execution mode at that point. You're super present, not paranoid. That's who we are and that's what we do.
So that is so well thought of. And while you're telling me all that, and I'm thinking of all that Orgo offers, and I'm so excited to learn more and to continue talking about this, but I can't help thinking that we're kind of spoiled as parents of how much technology we do have. And yet it still feels chaotic. It still feels like I'm juggling too much. And I grew up at a time when I was playing sports pre-internet, pre-apps, pre-phone, and I shudder to think that my parents probably got a single loose leaf of paper that said, here's the schedule, here's the telephone tree. If something happens, you got to call them. And what a different time we live in, isn't it?
We do. And it's a double-edged sword. So like from that point, it was like 1-800-COLLECT, right? It was like, mom, come pick me up. You remember that? So you
I
have a
do.
mom, come pick me up. So
Save a nickel.
exactly. No one had change in their pocket, but you could reach them at least that way. It was like the original text message. So it had its own challenges with the lack of information. Now it's like we have too much information. We have all these team chats and we have group chats and parent chats. You're like, oh my God, I can't with another chat. Just give me the information that I need so I can just show up at the right place with the right kid at the right time. Like that's it. That is all that I want to do.
Amazing. So to your point, when you get a game that says 3 to 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
that's not it. It's not just 3 to 4.
Lies. So again, 5 more apps can tell me that in fact it is 3 to 4 p.m. and it'll come into my Google Calendar exactly in the same way. And Wonderful Skylight is going to show that to me on my, kitchen counter all of the while, same exact thing. So directionally that's accurate, but actually it's not correct. And so when I started to have to do that T minus, calculation in my mind manually, and by the way, you do that 20 times a day because you get paranoid. You're like, wait, what was that thing that I said before? Back out of it again. You're like, okay, good. I have another hour, right? So you're constantly like rerouting your mind to be elsewhere instead of here because there's nothing else that's telling you or cueing you as to what, and where you should be. And a lot of folks are buffering their calendars in ways that again was manual. And when we started to learn of this, I'm like, this is nuts. Like, let's not do that. And let's have something else that'll be smart enough to do it for you.
Super
Awesome.
impressive. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. Like Joey said, I'm excited to learn more about it too and just learn more about your story. I have a question, that's kind of particular to our sport,
Yeah.
having, having three kids that have or have all played lacrosse, kind of putting the hat on of like, okay, that's the sport, as driving and, the experience of like being at the practices and being at the games and what you saw as a parent from the sidelines. How was your experience around this sport in particular, having gone through it multiple times and still in it?
Yeah, we love lacrosse. Like we're like a huge lacrosse family. First of all, we live in a town. I'm in New Jersey, so it's another lacrosse corridor, right? Like the Northeast, and so we are just kind of known for our girls program. The men's program is wonderful, and so they kind of grow up with stick in hand, and so there's a lot of passion around it, and there's a lot of commitment for it. So yes, there's a rec program, and everybody kind of works through it, and then there's travel, and then everybody aspires to lots of different club options around here as well. And then of course high school is kind of where they all culminate. And so my high schooler, my freshman, she can't wait for spring. She's going to be playing on the team as well. And so very much part of our day to day for sure. What I've observed, and that's not only unique to lacrosse, but with the other sports as well, because we do it year round, is when there was chaos in the home, particularly in the moments before we had to leave the house, where we just had an oh shit moment, right? When we realized we should have been out the door 15 minutes ago, or that we were fumbling to find the address, or we were misinformed as far as how much earlier to arrive. It just was like this heightened frequency and this heightened state in the home. By the time we got into the car, ultimately figuring out like which kid had to be in the car to be headed to the right place, the state was already lost as far as like mental focus, all the performance stuff that we want to talk about as far as them showing up at their best selves on the field, whether it's game, practice, or otherwise. It was like out the window. So recovering that in a small pocket of time in the car is what I've started to observe, not only within myself, but I would hear that in others as we would like huff and puff and arrive and be like, oh my God, we like barely made it here. So like our job as parents may be complete because we got them there and we're like, phew, job done. But theirs just has begun. So I started to kind of see that like the way that they're starting to develop a relationship mentally and emotionally, perhaps with their sports, started to become I don't know, muddled with like a little bit of negativity and anxiety because they were like, wait, the brain is pretty smart, right? Like we're like Pavlov's dogs are like, oh, if this is painful to leave the house, I'm going to inevitably start to associate that like sport is painful. Lacrosse is painful. Oh, I just like it doesn't feel good. Like we can't attribute always why that reason may be. When we separate the parts, we probably can. But like as a kid, you're just like, I just don't want to deal with that. Oh, it just doesn't feel good. So I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that is not territory that I want to be heading in, especially at an age where like they're really showing promise and they are enjoying their sport otherwise. And so that was like the dissociation of like, what can we be doing in the home? And of course, us as parents, where we carry that load so much to just mitigate so much of like that mental state. And so preparedness, clarity, getting in the car, being confident, time literacy, which we'll speak to in just a moment, everybody being on the same page has brought the frequency down. So we're now a team. We're on the same page. We see the day exactly as it is. We know exactly when to start preparing. We're all going to get the notifications, not the enemy here. Like you got it too, right? And then we're all kind of meeting at the car or at the door relative with that goal in mind. Like we're all coming out of the house. And so when we show up at that exact place early as requested, it's just like this confidence. So they walk on, I'm in the parking lot knowing that I'm in the right place. And so it's just like those details that I once again kind of tied back to the responsibility of the tech. Like the tech has to give that to me. And then I can do the human job of showing up with the right mindset, et cetera.
But that's a great lesson, not just for parents, but also for coaches too. You have to give yourself this time to prepare, to plan, to get your ducks in a row and come in calm, come in poised, because you're setting the tone for the anxiety
Throwing at the
level.
top.
I love that. So I think that's not just a lesson for parents, coaches too. Don't come into a practice or a game thinking you only have 5 minutes and you're going to be fine. It takes so much longer. Get your bag out, get your line set up, your clipboards in order. You got to talk to the referee. You got to welcome the visitor. And if you rush all of that, you're going to be in a different state and the kids are going to feed off of that. So I like the idea. I know people don't want to dedicate their entire Sunday to a lacrosse game, but you have to give more than you think in order to make it a special experience for the kids.
I will tell you the first thing that we scan for, I don't care what team, program, et cetera, when you show up, you're scanning for the coach. Like, am I in the right place? Am I in the right field? Like, that is the familiar face. Of course, you're looking for uniforms and making sure that, you're just kind of acclimating to a familiar environment. But the eyes that you seek are the coaches, which implies that they need to be there X time earlier, right? Yes, to set up, but also to greet. So I'm a big believer, again, coming from corporate and sitting in, fairly large roles, it's like tone at the top. So the way that you greet and show up and the culture that you establish, if you demand of others like early is on time, you got to be here, and you yourself are not there, well, that's a disconnect, right? Like, do as I say, don't do as I do. So I think that, again, there's even an extra brunt of like responsibilities, especially volunteer coaches face because of that ability to show up early.
So this is a great segue to the question I wanted to ask you, and you've already started to answer it, but I know there's going to be more. You have three kids that are going through and have gone through sports, so you've met and got to know a lot of different coaches over a lot of different sports. So what are some of the qualities, and this is just in your opinion, expert mom here, what are some of the qualities of coaches that have made for that experience to be more successful for you?
I've personally observed in my husband, who I just mentioned earlier, he's been coaching 9 years in soccer, just got pulled in off of, the parent sideline, raised his hand one time, didn't know much about soccer. He's a lifelong swimmer. He was like, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And my oldest was asking us to do it. And so, of course, he had to learn the game and the rules. But the thing that keeps pulling him back in are the parents that keep asking him to come back because he's a great communicator. Has nothing to do with his skills. There's actually the way that our little league, it's like a rec/travel league. There's always like an employee-based coach as part of the league that is alongside himself as the parent volunteer. And the two of them work very closely together, but he'll kind of take the reins on communicating. And so the way that he packages information, the completeness with which that information is communicated, the timeliness, the tools that are used. Yes, we use TeamSnap quite a bit. And so when we were designing Orgo, the integrations that we envisioned were specifically tied to how we would want to receive that information downstream from coach to parent. And then once that handshake is firmer, right? Once that information is flowing more freely, it's fewer questions on game day. It's fewer frantic texts of what field we're in, what time do we have to be there, where's the uniform, do I bring snacks? So tone at the top is one, of course, but the communication and information that is made available by the coaches is kind of like an implied skill set, but not everyone has that strength because it's like coaches want to coach. Like they're there because they're passionate about the game. They want to make the impact that they do. But inherently within the job is to make sure that your constituents, as much as you think the kids are, it's really the parents,
Hmm.
have the information that they need. And so furthermore, I actually stood in a gym actually wearing this. Why? This was like 3 nights ago. Like, why am I wearing the same thing? It's like my signature suit. So I stood there in a room of 35 football coaches across like a large county, and they have about 4,000 kids in programming. And we talked about Orgo. It's exactly the same thing. And they were an audience of coaches. A parent, of course, they're parents themselves too. But we talked specifically about the firmer handshake between the coach and the parent, and that relationship. When it works well, it works great because again, everybody's on the same team. The tension is not as high, and the culture that we want to ultimately have our kids observe, it starts to be lived, not just stated or written.
So I have some advice then because I can envision a coach listening to this and thinking, I don't have the best communication skills in the world, but boy, do I know the X's and O's. Tell me if you agree with this. Get yourself an assistant coach who's a prime communicator to handle the relationship between the parents and make sure, if nothing else, even if you can't teach the best backdoor cut and lefty shot in the world, that I'm going to make sure the parents know where to be, what to bring, why we're doing this, all of that. Good advice?
Absolutely. And I hate to say it. I mean, most times it's like a team parent or a team mom that just goes, okay, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff, but I'm happy to send a couple of emails, right? And just like communicate what information is pertinent. So the division of labor in any organization is so important. And let's position ourselves for strength. Like Sean, my husband, doesn't mind communicating. Like that is a passion of his, as well as the coaching kind of gig that he has. And so he's comfortable being in that seat. Many times you could bifurcate that. I want to do what I do. You'll do, better what you do. And then as long as those roles are filled, because I will say that I don't think at least in our experience, I would be more so driven to change teams. Again, we've had very positive experiences, but if I as a parent feel unsuccessful because I don't have the tools or the information to be at the places or fulfill in the commitment that we showed up to do, I'm going to look to the communication layer. And I'm going to say, you know what? I'm not feeling like I'm being taken care of. Here is ultimately the client. And sometimes it's not always about the kids' playing time, right? Like we can always justify all the things that, like, we all hear the podcast and we read the things. But as a parent, at the end of the day, if I feel uncared for and I'm not being communicated to in a way that sets me up for success for me to do my job, I'm going to give that some thought and I'll have feedback on that. And I've heard other parents kind of communicate as well those frustrations for either organizations or teams where that's not a strength. It becomes really frustrating. It's just harder for us to do the thing that we ultimately signed up to do.
Of course it does. So I'm like your husband, Sean. I take a tremendous amount of pride in communicating. I am famous for Tolstoy-esque long emails, but my philosophy is I would rather you find it in there than the FAQs that I'm going to get over and over. But one thing I will do for my parents is I will do at the top a too long, do not read crowd bullet point
TLDR.
that says, okay, for those of you who don't want to read the rest of this, I want you there at 3 o'clock and make sure you have your water and we're wearing black today.
That's it. That's it. And that's exactly it, right? So it's the TLDR, like these are the bullet points. And then I'm a big bullet point person, like scannable, like scan,
That's
scan,
right.
scan, scan. And then the rest is buried in there for sure.
Correct. All right, Marty, what do you get?
So, Zoya, you've centered your business around this concept of time literacy. I guess kind of two-part question. One is like, how do you define that? As well as what do you think is important for coaches in particular, in your opinion, to, pull from that or really make sure that they're understanding about it?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm like, I geek out on this stuff. And we had an aha moment too, like throughout this whole journey, what started as a journey of technology, first and foremost, really started to dig deeper into this ecosystem and, of course, relationship building and designing for our audience, like ultimately sussing out the higher level value of what we wanted to serve. And this is where the two words kind of crystallized for us, for me personally, time literacy, like financial literacy, which is the world that I come from. These were skills that, we realized 10 years ago, we were like, wait a minute, we should be like teaching this stuff to kids. And then there's a whole bunch of apps and fintechs that started to be spun up. And I was part of that era where I observed that. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's educational, it's gamified, but more importantly, it buys this like higher level value of like what it means to be eventually a functioning adult in society. So executive skills. So time literacy is the same thing, except we seem to like experience time subjectively as individuals, just like money, right? Where like some people are good with money, some people are bad. But at the end of the day, like it's pretty objective. Like time is objective. There's nothing unique about the way that you should look at your day the way that I do. And like all of a sudden we have a misunderstanding of what like those numbers mean. And then I'm like, okay, well, then the same concept applies to time literacy. It's like, it has to be taught. It's not innate. And some of us are born with it better than others, or life experiences have shaped a sharper, kind of tool set around that. But ultimately, it's the same skill set. And we should probably teach that early on. And then the other unlock was like, wait, young athletes have an unfair advantage of learning time literacy sooner and earlier than others because everything about their day is essentially time-based. And so they come along for this ride. I mean, of course, as parents do, but they come along for the ride with us, and they understand the concept of time perhaps better than others and sooner than others. So let's bring them into the conversation. So time literacy is born, TM, trademarked, because we love it and we feel really passionate by it. So hopefully for an R as well. But the only reason we were able to submit it, it's being worked through the process, is because within the context of the tool that we designed, it makes sense. And so the way that we define time literacy relative to what we built within Orgo is the relationship with time in the real world. And in terms of how it impacts how we collaborate with others and how we experience and traverse like space time is effectively time literacy in like fancier words. And so in a sense, the way that you understand your day and that event 3 to 4 with the travel time and everything else should not differ from the way that I understand that event. Whether we're sitting on this, the same family, we're on the same team, or just as kind of humans operating in the real world. And so the time literacy piece is being specifically applied for adults too. Some of us need it more than others, but really pointing that in the direction of the kids. And I always cite this example, and it's true. So my 7-year-old develops time literacy, and this is how. So she has on her little watch, she'll receive a notification from Orgo, and it says, it's time to start preparing for swim. and she'll come right around this corner and she'll start packing up her swim bag. And she'll stand at the door writing about 10 minutes after that for carpool to come pick her up. And she'll know exactly who's picking her up which day because it says so. And so she kind of stands there ready, whether it's for us to drive her, because if it's our turn and she'll understand that we're picking up Lucy and Abby and whomever else, or someone else is picking her up because it's, their turn to. Like, that's executive skills, arguably, for a 7-year-old who understands her role in what it takes to be to be a part of this event and to be successfully contributing to it. So then, like, roll this up now to my teenager, my 14-year-old, who really needs to have time literacy. And then my whole thing to her is like, own your day. You are the hero of your story. I'm a supporting character in it. You have practice. You wanted me to drive you to the mall. Yes, I did. I did that today, this afternoon. She put that into Orgo. She assigned me as a driver. She nudged me in Orgo. Careful what you design because they'll take advantage of it. So in Orgo, we designed a feature where once you assign somebody, they'll accept it because they'll receive the notification, or you can miss it, in which case someone else can then nudge it, be like, you got that, right? Like, you got this. And so it saves the text message, but allows the system to kind of be the bad guy. So first thing she woke up this morning, they're all from school because teachers convention, and she was like nudging me multiple times. And then I get like all these notifications from Orgo. They're like, friendly reminder, Olivia has assigned you as a driver. I'm like, thanks, got it. So she wants to own her day, but she recognizes that there are people that come in and out of making that day successful. And there's collaboration and reliance that you'll have on others. And she like looks around in Orgo across the other events, and I'll be on a call like this one. And she's been known to like slip little notes as I'm like seamlessly speaking with you. And she'll be like, in Orgo, it says that no one's driving at 4:00. Can you take me to Starbucks? I'm like, damn, she got me. So she's like using the tool against me, but it demonstrates obviously her awareness and her ability to collaborate better than thinking that, she lives in her own little world.
So ultimately, you're teaching responsibility and accountability here. And I heard you say that you do it with your 7-year-old. When do you start? What age do you think is appropriate to start introducing this?
It really depends on the parent as far as if you want this tool within the possession of your kid. And so many, folks obviously have a very different opinion in terms of like what a relationship with electronic devices means for their kids. Within our household, she has a little phone that only works in the house. She doesn't have a phone number on it or anything, but it allows us to download the tool on it. And so then she is what we call a non-user on it, meaning like she can't do anything with it. She can just view, or she's a viewer rather. And so, but she can receive the notifications. So she becomes very passive, right? She can't like edit things in it, but she'll be a viewer. So she'll receive those notifications. So from that perspective, it's my decision as a parent to find that to be an appropriate tool for her to have and benefit from those notifications. Others be like, you know what, I don't even want a device in my kid's hand, whether it's in home or otherwise, until they're X years old. So I think it just comes down to a personal preference. But for us, because she's a third, she's at carpools all the time, she's out of the they like raise themselves.
Marty, I'm spitballing here, right? I'm thinking of this as we go, and I'm trying to tie it into lacrosse a little bit. This is one of many sports where time plays a big part, right? Because there's a clock and it's ticking down. And at the older levels, we start to introduce the shot clock, so there's an urgency here, and it's different than baseball, right? Baseball is you have to get 3 outs. That inning, especially Little League baseball, that inning can take 2 hours if you're not careful. In lacrosse, it's very regimented. So if we teach young kids as early as 7, like Zoya, your daughter, or maybe a parent feels like 10 is a better age for that. If we're teaching them these time literacy skills at home, do you think that translates better to when you're trying to teach the concept of time on a field, as in, hey, we have 2 minutes left in this game and we have to make something work here? What do you think about that? That's just a kind of an
That's a really interesting question. Yeah. And I don't know. You got a lot of swimming in your family too, Zoya. I know, Joey, you go way back in the pool, so I don't know if maybe there's some relevance there too. I mean, you're just trying to go as fast as you can, but
shave off the milliseconds.
Unique scenario.
Right? It's you against the wall.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating question. I think probably yes, right? I didn't start thinking about, when I'm on the field as an athlete, I didn't start thinking about a sense of urgency, let's say, because the clock is winding down, probably until high school. Maybe it was like starting to trickle into the strategy as a middle school player. But I mean, just thinking about your 7-year-old, like, seeing that notification and waiting at the front door, knowing who's driver. I mean, there's, like you mentioned earlier, that's got to have a profoundly calming effect of knowing how things are going to go. And my,
And they're game ready.
my
They're ready
gut,
for the
yeah, they're
contest.
game ready. My gut is that a player who's got that skill set growing in real time is going to hear a coach go, okay, like, let's slow it down and, take our time with this versus, hey, like, let's try to go get a shot within the next 15 seconds. Like, I think they're probably able to digest that information more effectively. It's a good thought.
I think that's a lovely, lovely connection and a very powerful one. And I think that ultimately to develop a healthy relationship with time is really the takeaway, whether it's on the field, because there is that sense of urgency or there is those sense of directions that can be applied to the context of the game or otherwise. Obviously, in the pool, it's you against the clock, it's you against the wall all day. That is the point of the sport, effectively. And so the way that we experience time ultimately in a very healthy way, not only is productive, executive skill, et cetera, but I just think it needs to be healthy. Like it's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Zoya, in preparation for this interview, I've watched you on some other podcasts and got to know you a little bit and about you and this company and what you're doing. I've heard you talk about how in your background, you didn't get sports as a kid. Could you talk a little bit about that? Talk a little bit about what skills maybe you feel like you didn't get from not having sports compared to some of your peers?
It's so nice to be able to kind of come back full circle with this, which I never really got a chance to talk about this chapter of my life until these kinds of discussions started to become more relevant within this milestone of like my career. Because previously it was like, yeah. Immigrated here with my mom when I was 9. We had $8 in our pocket. Wah. Like that, those are like true facts, but like they're wildly I don't know, they're just crazy to think about, but they're all relevant, I think, in terms of like the building blocks. And so I now come back to them and I don't go blah, blah, blah. I like honor them and I contextualize them with like why that their importance. Yeah, so we did, arrive just the two of us here. We immigrated from the Ukraine when I was 9. We touched down in Brooklyn, New York, as many did in the early 90s. And so, I didn't know the language, neither did she. She was a computer programmer. She was a developer. So she was able to find a job in that way because that's kind of the universal job of, computer programming. And so she was able to build a career that way and a very successful one at that. But I observed technology firstly very early on in the home through her. So that's kind of how I got infected with the bug. So that was data point number one. But then ultimately living in Brooklyn, I was a latchkey kid. Yes, I know it was the latchkey generation. And so I'm sure, Joey, when you were saying, oh, back when, we were running around and we were on these teams, no such thing. In Brooklyn, at least within my experience, we rollerbladed until the lights, came on. We would rollerblade up and down 40 blocks to see your closest friend in the bus lanes. We would play handball in the park. We would play basketball, all the things, but it wasn't as structured. And so the recognition of being very active, absolutely. We were just outside constantly. So that's a plus. But in terms of structure, team-based, kind of in the way that our kids are experiencing now, that was not an experience until I moved, which I would say immigrated, again, from inner city to suburbia. And so my mom pulled us out from Brooklyn. She was like, for high school freshman year, we're moving into the suburban town, highly ranked, school system, all those wonderful things. I was like, okay, no. So I like lived with my girlfriend in Brooklyn all like the whole summer, and then like basically showed up the day before freshman year started to be like, let's do this. So day 1 plus 1 hour came into a completely different ecosystem. No frame of reference or context for like how all of that operated. But one thing became very observable immediately is that my peers moved differently. Not only did they grow up with one another, which is a whole other, obviously more, emblematic kind of factor of being, in suburban kind of living in those towns together, but they've been on teams together. They've developed these relationships since they were in kindergarten, kicking the soccer ball. Remember, this is freshman year. So they've already had quite the journey with one another, right through middle school, et cetera. I was like, you guys like move differently. Like you have conflict resolution skills. You have like all these soft skills. And I was like a tough kid from Brooklyn. I'm like, well, I have other skills, but I don't have that. So I felt without. And in full earnest, it was not until like early to mid 20s when I felt like I really leveled up. by way of my, professional career, et cetera, and just kind of being much more attuned to those things. And interestingly, I joined the tennis team and I ran track. And so I was a 3-season athlete, but like not in any sort of like highly recognizable, like toward the end, of course, I'm sure I was like varsity or something. But the point was that it wasn't like, wow, this was my calling. So I gained the skills which were necessary. But what I really kind of made an earmarked observation with was that when it's my time and my turn to become a parent, I will invest. I will look for communities and I will want the experience of my kids to be the ones that I observed of my peers at the time. And that I knew, of course, I, due to my circumstances, was without. So full circle moment, here we are, very much fulfilling on that.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question here. The first is, how would you define, in youth sports in particular, how would you define a successful sports season? And then the second part to that is, what are some of the traits of the coaches, from your experience with your girls, like the coaches that really were able to deliver a successful season? What were some of those characteristics that they embodied?
Yeah, thank you for that question because I'll answer it differently now than perhaps I would have even a couple of years ago, especially now. And I think that you'll kind of see where I'm going with this. A successful season for us is a multi-sport one because we do not limit our kids as to which single sport per season they choose. They swim year round. That's the anchoring event. And Joe, you know this, like this is like a huge commitment, right? And they do this, even the 7-year-old, she swims up. So they do this probably 6 times a week. So that's the anchor. Then they will not sacrifice the fact that they love in the fall soccer. All 3 of them do. In the spring, it'll 100% lacrosse takes over, and we'll do clinics in between in the winter as well. But at that point, like swim season is like sky high through the roof with all the meets. So we kind of, hunker down on that. Then we have track in the spring as well. And then there's dance throughout, but like just light dance, not like crazy competitive stuff. So for us, it's never like monolithic. It's always multiple and becomes a matrix. And one of the other reasons that Orgo is really necessary in my life is that I need to see each day for all of the conflicts and overlaps that they each present because every day does. So for us, a successful season is saying yes to the right things and declining those that are of less importance. For example, we'll always prioritize a game, of course, over practice. We'll prioritize certain practices over, perhaps other events and things. And so the tie back to the second part of the question around the coach characteristic is we communicate very openly with our coaches in terms of that this is what the Lehrer girls do. They do other things. And the older girls have the responsibility that we place on them to communicate that directly to the coaches and state their conflicts in advance. So we'll email, we'll always kind of do our part, especially well in advance when we know that there's like a meet 3 weeks from now or a game that, is away or whatever. But for them to kind of come to their coach on deck or, on the field and be like, tomorrow or next week, I have this XYZ. Look them in the eye and be uncomfortable for a moment because you're not delivering the best of news and see what comes back. The best coaches that don't punish my kids for their commitments elsewhere is what we look for because they're not prioritizing going to the mall, hanging out, sleeping in. They're doing amazing things elsewhere. And that has to be celebrated and recognized and embraced. And when they punish or when they start to backlash or they kind of state something that's a little bit harsh, we sit with that. We will determine what's the best course, but we at least observe it. And so we gravitate to those who, and the kids do too, with whom they develop like a really warm, collaborative relationship where it's not always going to be, okay, you're going to probably get penalized on playtime. Okay. That's what happens, right? But at the same time, let's not make them feel like crap for actually saying the thing that they need to, but also doing some really good things outside of that immediate team.
That makes a lot of sense. And we actually just recorded an episode not too long ago about the importance of being multi-sport athletes and really encouraging coaches out there to promote other sports and the value in that. So yeah, props to you for really prioritizing that.
Yeah. No, even in the room the other night when I was with the football coaches, I mentioned the reason that like the conversation got so engaging, especially from their coach point of view, is because we're sitting in the late stage of the fall right now. They're in playoffs, etc. But guess what they're heading into? They're also coaching basketball. They're coaching lacrosse, more often than not. And they themselves understand that they're probably going to get the same kids, throughout the year as they kind of travel through all the different sports and things. And so they're just like, if this is a thing that works to support families that don't have to say no to things, or they can at least lay out their day to make informed decisions of what they say yes to, all for it.
So Zoya, you had alluded to the fact that your daughter has a like an iWatch with it, right? So what form does this take? Is it an app? Is it a desktop? Is it all of the above?
Yeah. So we're mobile first and we're mobile only. We do not have a desktop. And again, it's very, very important to clarify that we are not built for coaches and leagues. We are uniquely and specifically built downstream in the last leg of the race, which is execution. And so we sit family side. So this is not anything that the coach has to interface with, other than perhaps advocating for their families to become aware of Orgo, such that that relationship and that handshake can become firmer. And whatever tooling the coaches already are using within their leagues, whether again it's TeamSnap or any other administrative tool, our job as the tech company that we are is to make sure that we integrate, or at least we receive schedules down. And for right now, we do with pretty much most. So that information will flow down to the parent. So that's an important clarification. And so that's kind of what I would say first and foremost. Like, it's not a coach tool, but at the same time, the reason that, once again, like we kind of have this aha moment, is the parent is most underserved in this ecosystem, right? So there, everything is built. It's a $60 billion industry. Like, it's built for leagues, coaches, and managers, and even NIL players. But the parent is kind of like, okay, just show up, shut up, and pay up. Like, sounds great. Like, I need tools too. I want to feel supported. I want to feel successful. I want to make sure that I have something in my pocket that, is allowing me to feel like I am contributing to my leg of the race, which in this case is execution. So we sit all the way downstream and we hook on and extend the existing, to the existing ecosystem.
That makes total sense. Is it on your roadmap to be able to have families connect with each other to say,
Mm.
listen, we have a similar timeline. I need a carpool situation here. I need to nudge another parent, for example. Is that something you're all
Oh my
considering or
God.
working on?
This is the holy grail. So the thing about tech is that it's super annoying in that you just got there. You like arrived at that conclusion and you connected the dots right away. We're like, well, of course, because that's a parent journey. So it just makes sense. That was our requirement from day one. Like, we literally sat down with a piece of paper and we like wrote down what would be the end state. It's taken us 2 years to get here. And we're about a month out from rolling out like a fully, maybe a couple of weeks, a fully comprehensive carpool feature that allows to enable exactly what you've described. So I'll put it back in our terms. I'm in my crew, the Lehrer crew, you're in your crew, and all three of us are in our own crews. We sit in like a different text thread, right? Where we're like constantly negotiating. You got Monday, I got Tuesday, something changed, and I got to pick up Wednesday, pick up, like, that's happening constantly. And I have about four of them, maybe five, depending on like each kid in each season. So we're gonna kind of like stop with the texting and we're gonna go ahead and connect with one another in Orgo and just connect our crews. When that connection happens, I can see all of the people in your crew, not their scheduled events, none of that, but just the people in your crew, kids included. And I can start to pull in either the kid or yourself as either a participant, being a kid, or a driver, being one of you, and I can map them to all of the different events, and you will receive notifications just as I do inside my own crew, but we will be cross-functional in that way. We will nudge. No bad guys here, just nudge. We will also say things like, I need coverage. Like, nope, I can't do it. I need coverage. And that's going to go back out to, the broader ethos where, people can to grab whatever they need. And so that collaboration is actually technically pretty complicated to enable. So we had to go brick by brick, foundation by foundation to build. Firstly, let's tell time the way we actually spend it. So that's the whole engine that converts events to logistics and all the different missing details that it has to have. Let's start to complicate the journey with multiple stops, which, by the way, is a preamble to obviously carpool. And the thing that ultimately comes to is this magical moment that when I pull little Jimmy off of, Martin, your crew, he's automatically being populated as a stop in the journey. The journey automatically expands to account for the travel time. Joey, the second that I have to pick up, little Molly from your house, that journey expands even more so. And then I click a magic button that says optimize route. Then I'll know that I actually have to pick up Molly first, and then I'm going to go to Jimmy. Right. So like all of this like math stuff is just systemically enabled, and then we all get notifications. And then your journey, by the way, Martin, you're the last stop on the way, so you're going to see a truncated event. You're not going to see my whole end to end. That's for me to see, because I'm like the first one that starts to kind of kick off the drive. So it'll be hyper personalized to like what your journey looks like versus mine. So like that's taken us a bit to get to, and be like super beautiful with the UI, and very, very like elegant, like not confuse anybody. So it's been kind of a challenge, but a really, really fun.
Love all of that. I want to throw something in the mix for you to consider is that so you're very nice, you're giving nice little nudges. After a few unresponsive nudges, you should throw in a cross check, right, Martin? Like a nice drive on with you're not responding, you're not picking up my kid.
Drop from the crew. That's it. That's like
at least for the lacrosse version, cross check them.
I love it. No, it's and that's what I find too. Like in these threads, we're all well-meaning, wonderful people that just like want to like get through the day fairly unscathed. And so what I find in my text threads, it's like the one piece of information, it's like the TLDR, right? It's like all we want to do is just kind of ask, like, you got it today? Like, can you do it today? Meanwhile, it's like, good morning, how are you? How's it going? How's everybody? I'm like, I don't want to talk. Like, I just want to get to the information. So while everyone is so focused on chat, like, oh, AI chats, I'm like, less chatting. I want task-based assignments. I just want clarity. I want to be brief with it, and I want to move on with our day. So like that is our hypothesis. That's for people who appreciate the snappiness of it all. Others want to have a dialogue with something. Cool, do that thing. I don't have any time for it. Maybe it's the New Yorker in me, but I got to keep it moving.
That's amazing. I love it. Zoya, are we going to be seeing you at the New England Lacrosse Convention in February?
I would love that so much. I mean, I'm like a Bostonian by osmosis. I just like love the area. So I look forward to receiving all that information from Aaron and from you guys. Like we'd love to become, a far more embedded kind of presence within your operation to support the handshake that we talked about, and just make sure that the families as well as coaches are feeling supported in all of the ways that we're just trying to come together and make an impact here.
Because as a reminder, we have a league of about 4,000 coaches, but virtually all of them are parents as well, right? We all are. I'm a parent of 3, so that hit home when you said that. That's when it starts to break. I feel that.
The third will break you. No doubt.
You're going to have a lot of coaches coming in and who love lacrosse, but I think also love organization and love tech on the market that's just helping us do our job. And I can't think of a better one, an ambassador for that.
Let's give everybody a code to do that with, so they can benefit even more so from our
amazing.
So what you all will do is you'll go to www.orgohq.com. That is our website. You'll see all the things that we've just talked about visualized in a very clear way, we hope. We're very visual communicators. And so it's kind of like a show me, don't tell me. So it'll be a quick scroll to see that. It'll be a download either to Android or Apple. So we work on both seamlessly, which, by the way, for like a multi a phone household that has so much friction with the blue and the green buttons, like orange, we always say like blue plus green equals orange, because like we're just kind of like the common denominator between the two, so the worlds can finally combine. So download to either, and so we are $6.95 per month per family, or $59 per family for the year. But specifically for the annual plan, if you apply MYL25 as a code, you'll get 25% off for the annual plan. And then that way we know that that's how we're supporting, the MYL family.
Amazing. Great deal. And Marty will make sure we add that to our screen as well. We're pretty high tech over here too. Sorry.
Overlays. Yeah.
Zoya, this was such a pleasure. It was great talking with you, especially about your TM'd time literacy concept, which I think we could all absolutely benefit from. Great conversation to have as coaches and parents. So thank you for joining us today. We want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in for another great casual conversation we're having on coaching youth sports. Want to just especially thank the folks at MYL for powering this and allowing us to have these great conversations with great people like Zoya. And so thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zoya. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.